Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, can you tell I'm bringing some energy with me up here, right?
That's right.
Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for coming. This is our first ever ESRI, Graduate School of Education and Human Development Alumni Panel.
Nice.
I am Jacinta Bruton, the Graduate School of Education and Human Development, also known as GSEHD. Do you all call it GSEHD or GSEHD? Yeah, I've heard a couple different things. Well, I am the Alumni Relations Director for GSEHD. So thank you for being here. GSEHD Alumni Relations is sponsoring this event because of the feedback that we got from ESRI attendants from last year who said, we really want to hear something from our alumni. Is that true? Do you all agree that you want it? I guess you're here, so that says it all, right? You want to hear from the alumni. You'll get a chance to hear from them. Well, today's panel discussion is called Transitions, Life After Grad School. The whole point of the conversation is to talk about how, for these alumni to talk about how they successfully transitioned from GSEHD graduate school into the real world, not the MTV show, but the real world. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator, and she's going to introduce our panel, and then we'll just get going. All right? Sandra Duvall. She's a GSEHD graduate with a doctorate degree 2003. Dr. Sandra Duvall, an instructional specialist, has more than 20 years' experience in a diverse array of educational contexts. She has worked for many years in organizational development and is certified by the Maryland State Department of Education as a facilitative leadership trainer. She earned a BA in sociology and secondary education from Stony Brook University, a master's degree from Columbia University, New York, and a doctoral degree in special education from the George Washington University. She is one of the founding members of Montgomery County Public Schools' International Standards-Based Curriculum Development Team. In 2012, she was invited as a board member of Haiti Future at the White House's Champions of Change event. Dr. Duvall.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm so very delighted to be here this afternoon to share a couple hours with you. When I was invited, I was thinking, wow, I wish I had that when I was here. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, trying to transition from school to the real world. George Washington is an amazing university. After graduation, different people cross your path who've attended GW, and they will guide you and give you some advice on how to move forward and use the opportunity to network with others. I'm happy to know that GW is among the top 35 graduate schools of education nationwide, held that standard since 1997. It ranked among the top 11 private schools of education. And the rehabilitation counseling program is ranked 7th in the nation, which is great. So indeed a fine university to be a graduate of. I'm going to introduce the panelists. First, we have Dr. Doran Gresham. Has 15 years of experience as a special educator, grassroots worker, mentor, and school administrator. He taught special education at the elementary and high school levels in Montgomery County Public Schools and is an adjunct professor at GW, Grad College, and the College of New Jersey. He currently teaches graduate courses in universal design for learning for the Regional Training Center. He is the co-founder of Why the Sun Rises, an international initiative to showcase the faces and stories of women in education. You should check it out. It's really amazing. Dr. Gresham completed his doctoral studies in special education and emotional disturbance at GW. He holds a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Virginia and a master's degree in emotional disturbance and learning disabilities K-12 from the College of William and Mary. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, I will introduce Dr. Vijay Krishna. He's the Director of Personnel Credentialing Accreditation Programs at the American National Standards Institute. He is recognized expert in the field of personal credentialing and works closely with various national and international agencies that are involved in developing competency-based credentialing systems. Dr. Krishna is the project co-lead of the Lumina Foundation-funded George Washington Institute of Public Policy grant on investigating the role of an NC Standards collaborative to improve transparency and trust in labor market credentialing in the U.S. Dr. Krishna's academic qualifications include a doctorate in Human and Organizational Learning from GW, and an MBA from Satai Sai University in India. He is the recipient of the Cutting Edge Award in the Top 10 Conference Proceedings paper from the Academy of Human Resources Development.
Thank you.
Welcome. Help me welcome Jamie Matthews. Jamie is the Programs and Policy Manager for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation Education and Workforce Program. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 company dedicated to strengthening the nation's educational standards and the quality of the workforce. Matthews develops and manages USCCS's programs for higher education and workforce development and conducts research on education and workforce reform, policies, and initiatives. She also builds coalitions with other nonprofit organizations, chambers of commerce, and businesses. Before joining the chamber, Matthews worked for Division of Student and the Academic Student Services, Support Services as a program coordinator at GW's. Matthew received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Davidson College and a master's in higher education administration from GW. Welcome, Jacob Wilson. Jacob has worked in a variety of higher education roles, including NASPA, Student Affairs Administrators in Higher Education, GW's Multicultural Student Services Center, American University's LGBT's Resource Center and Cornell University Residential Programs Office. He currently serves as an academic program advisor at the Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars, where he oversees the advocacy service and arts academic internship program, providing integrative experiential education focus on creating social change for college students. And that's students from all over the world. Jacob earned an MA in Higher Education Administration from GW and a BA in Political Science and Women's and Gender Studies at Iowa State University. Dr. Roche. Dr. Roche has worked as an assistant principal at Gunston Middle School in Arlington, Virginia, for the last 11 years and also serves as an adjunct professor at GW. Prior to being an administrator, she worked as a speech-language pathologist for 7 years. Dr. Roche has extensive experience with culturally and linguistically diverse students, bilingual education, disproportionality and special education, school law, gifted minority students, development of school-wide mentor programs, instructional leadership, cultural competence, and teacher professional development. She has created and designed a successful school-wide student staff mentor program and was actively involved with a community mentor program for African American female students. Dr. Roche has a bachelor's degree in communicative sciences and disorders, a master's degree in speech and language pathology from Hampton University, and a doctorate from bilingual special education from GW. Welcome. You sent us an array of questions. They're great questions, and we couldn't choose all of them, so hence our little bowl right here. And we will randomly select questions for us to answer. It's a very informal format, and hopefully it's more conversational than anything else, where we all will learn from each other, I hope, in the next couple of hours. So we'll get started. General coursework. This question is about general coursework. What general coursework do you recommend for current GSEHD grad students in order for them to be prepared for the realities of life after grad school? Any of the panelists?
All right, well, I'll start. Hello, everyone. I'm currently an assistant principal in a middle school, so I've been doing that for 11 years. And my background was special education. And so when I was out looking at jobs, and I'm in the middle of my doc program, I was like, well, what am I going to do? You know, what am I going to do with this degree? The focus was looking at overrepresentation of special ed students. So I decided to take all my electives and coursework in administration. But when I started the first day of school and had started the first year as an assistant principal, some of the biggest struggles that I had to face were things dealing with adults and a lack of human resources training. How do you address, I knew the curriculum, I knew how to deal with students, I knew how to, create a lesson and be engaged, and I knew what good instruction was. But how do you deal with a student, a parent who comes in, upset about a teacher? How do you deal with a staff member who's not professional, a staff member who's coming in intoxicated, a staff member who's coming in 2 hours late, sending inappropriate emails to parents? How do you help a child get over a divorce? Just things that we kind of take for granted when you go into administration. So for me, in working with people, regardless of what you go into as you leave GSEHD, having that course or taking an elective in human resource development or human resource issues, human resource management, would have saved me a lot of time trying to backtrack and, and kind of deal with things. It would have been a lot easier to kind of know how to deal with some very challenging situations. So through just being in the fire and in the midst of it, I learned a lot. But that's what I would suggest, one thing.
If I may just add to what Monica said, since my doctoral degree is in human resource development, one thing that I find is when you go to workplace, the most important skill is your people skill. Mm-hmm. How do you connect with people? How do you deal with conflicts? How do you deal in terms of making sure that you are operating and making sure that your team is operating at a very, very high level of competence? So currently in my job, in many ways, I'm not doing what I was quote unquote prepared for. But that has provided me a foundation. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the way in which I think of it is, can you take up a job, develop new sets of competencies required for that job, master it in the shortest possible time? And my principle has been is like, allow yourself to become something different. So many times, like my HRD degree, are there people here from HRD program in this hall? Okay, are there international people who have an F1 visa? Okay, one of the challenges that I had was being an international student, you don't have a work visa, you have to go through lots of challenges. And my background, my bachelor's degree was in finance and accounting, my master's was in marketing, and my doctoral degree was in human resource development. And what I do combines everything that I do in a very, very different manner. So it's in terms of how quickly can you adapt to what the employer or your organization wants you to do. But I would really emphasize, like, in terms of people skills, even, like, I have about 30 to 40 people who work for my program. Some of them are brilliant technical experts in their field. But the ones that I think do exceedingly well are the ones who are really good in communication, who are really good in terms of connecting with people. You cannot lead people unless you connect with them. So trying to see what are the courses that can help you to develop some of those fundamental skills, the foundational skills, is going to be really crucial.
I'd like to add to that as well. I think it's just smart to think, have some idea of backwards design in mind. Where do you honestly want to be? You know, not what do you want to be when you grow up, but where would you like to be? Do you want to be in an urban center? You know, do you want to work with big people? Do you want to work with little people? These things are the things that I think are going to inform what your coursework is really going to look like. Do you have a knack for business? Or, you know, we walk around with computers in our pockets at this point. So are you thinking about app development? That's certainly a lucrative field. Why not mix the two things? Mix your passion the thing that you're passionate about and what you learned about in school with business. I know for me, some of the most interesting classes that I took while I was in my doctoral program were sociology classes. And later on, they really, really paid off because there really is no educational reform without thinking about the sociological implications around schools. I mean, you could create a fantastic school and pour lots of resources into it, but it's almost like having water into a fancy bucket or water into a bucket with holes in it. I mean, you could pour great water into a bucket with holes in it and it won't sustain itself. Well, you learn about these things in sociology classes. So for me, that was very helpful. For you, it might be something else. Maybe it's business. I know a lot of us have entrepreneur ideas. Our friends have ideas. Well, this is the time. This is really the time to craft those different things. So thinking backwards, think from the end result. Where do I really, really want to be, and work yourself back.
I know we said that we weren't all going to answer these, but I'll break this quickly, and I'll be very quick about it. I think that one thing that is a challenge sometimes is, especially if you're working full-time or working in an assistantship, and you think, oh, I have to take 9 credits, maybe I'll take something a little bit easier. Sometimes even if it's a little subconscious, you think about that. I encourage you to take something, even if it's outside your comfort zone. For me, interpersonal communication skills, the counseling skills, that comes fairly naturally for me. And so I stayed away from those courses, and I went outside of GSEHD and I took a course in public policy analysis. Mm-hmm. And that was hard. But I'm really glad that I did that, and to really challenge myself that step further, and I encourage you to do that. And the other piece I will say is, the more experience you have in assessment and statistics, yeah, you cannot go wrong. It's one of those things now I wish already I would have taken an assessment course, and it's so valuable, especially if you work in a nonprofit or if you're working in a school, a nonprofit pretty much. Being able to back up your work that you're doing, anything you're able to do to give data that proves what you're doing and hopefully keeps your funding. I have a weird job. Heather works with me. I'm an academic program advisor, and I work with college students, which means I do a little career development with them. I do academic advising with them, and I also do a lot of other different things with them. And so I am a little of an amalgamation of a lot of different things that my friends who work on a traditional college campus do.
Is your MA in counseling?
Higher education administration.
I'm wondering, what have you done about mentorship, or did you seek out mentorship as you were entering into the job market?
I think that's something we could all really address. I'll say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking Mr. Jacob Wilson if he sought out mentorship after completing his degree from George Washington University.
I sought it out before, during, and after. Still doing it, and I encourage you to do that. For me, what I wanted to do in higher education didn't necessarily exist or wasn't an entry-level position. So having people that are in that area, policy, but also practice area, but also people from my undergrad who had a really strong social justice focus, keeping those people in my life and contacting them. And something that's not on my bio, I'm a prospective student as well here at GW in the doctoral program. And so I just talked to both of these wonderful doctors here, and I'm like, how do I do this? And so yes, keep that up. And I'm sure many of you have things to say about mentorship.
Yes, I would highly encourage it. I think that finding the right mentor for you can sometimes be a bit of a challenge, and it could be a trial and error process. But I think one thing that we'll all find about education is people really like to talk about themselves. and are very happy to talk to other people about their passion. We all love education, whether you're in special education, international education, it doesn't matter. People love talking about what they do and making connections for other people. So I always encourage students that I work with to just ask a lot of questions, never turn down an informational interview, even if you don't think anything's going to come out of it, because you never know if that might lead to a future mentor or somebody who could connect you with somebody who would be a good fit for you.
Thank you. For sure, the advice of the panelist, be open to learning. When I graduated from GW, I ended up doing things that are very different in some ways from what I've learned, as Dr. Krishna was saying. I started working for myself, and I wish I'd taken business courses. And that was a beautiful venture. I did it for about 3-4 years. And then I also became an organizational development specialist. I have never even dreamed of doing that whatsoever, but I loved it, and I did it for about 7 years. So be open to grow, definitely seek mentors throughout the course of your career. Even now in my career, as you learn more, you realize that there are many places or different places you might want to go. And it's your goal to always keep mentors in your life throughout your career. We'd like to go to another question. So why did you choose to attend GW Graduate School of Education and Human Development? Why GW?
I think that's probably the easiest one, so I'll go ahead and take that. I moved here from North Carolina. I was an admission counselor for a couple of years, and in a pretty rural part of suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I think when I was looking at graduate schools, what struck me about GW really started with its location. You can't get much better in terms of the policy, the associations, whether you're going to want to work at a school. You've got Maryland, you've got Virginia, you've got DC. Just the plentiful opportunities that exist just by being where we are, I think is one of GW's greatest selling points, because I could have never had the experiences that I had living in, middle of nowhere, Michigan. I'm sorry, there's, great programs all across the country, but because of being in DC, there are just so many amazing things, wonderful speakers, lots and lots of professional development opportunities because of all the conferences and associations that come through here. There's nothing like it, and when I speak to people who I've met in my job now, they always just claim, wow, because of where you've been, your resume is so stocked up because of the opportunities that DC itself presents. So that's the most basic of answer I'll give.
I'd like to say
Dr.
something.
Grisham.
I think this goes back to the question of mentorship, right? When I was at William & Mary, my mentor, and he still is, mentor and good friend, is Dr. James Patton. And Patton is a bad, bad man. I mean, he's really somebody to follow. He's done a tremendous amount of work writing on overrepresentation of black males in special education. But he's also done a lot of work on the underrepresentation of students of color in gifted education classrooms. I remember at graduation, it's kind of a quiet moment. You're graduating from your graduate program. You're incredibly happy and your family's there. I get a chance to finally go over to him and see him, and he just kind of pulls me over to the side, puts his hand on my shoulder, and says, "You're not done, right?" And that's Pat. Like, even in the midst of celebrating this day, my mentor is the one that's telling me, "You're not finished, right? You really only started with this thing." Right? So staying close to him, and then having him pass me on to some other good folks, having them then pass me on to other good folks. Like, it's that people power. That's what really attracted me to GW. This shows my age, right? If you couldn't tell that I'm already old, this shows my age. I remember calling around, like not Googling and nothing. I remember calling around to graduate programs and just asking folks, because I got their information in the mail. So I'm calling around and I'm asking different people about different programs. Tell me about your program, and setting up information interviews. I got to GW and I talked to a person named Nancy Belknap. Couldn't be more different than each other. Just just as far as who we are. But I fell in love with this woman immediately. Her passion for special education, her joy for professional development schools, which is where, you know, we train our folks. So for me, it was falling in love with her passion for what they were doing. One conversation with her face to face, and I was done. I knew that this was the place that I needed to be. But mentorship and also having making a connection with people, that was critical for me.
I think an additional piece too is quality of life for me. Coming from middle of nowhere Iowa, and wanting to live somewhere that wasn't as homogenous and that had nightlife, had opportunities. I think those things are things you also have to consider, especially if you're visiting from out of town and if you're thinking about moving to DC. DC offers so many things with that quality of life and quality of experience. I had the opportunity to have my assistantship at the largest professional association of my field. I was the only one of 2 graduate students across the country that had that opportunity. I also got to work for a semester at the Department of Education. That's something that allowed me to experience policy that if I lived anywhere else, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And to be honest, I paid more to go to DC. There were some programs that were giving me more financial aid. We never like to talk about money, right? But it's an important thing. And for me, it was an investment. If I have to take out a little bit more loans or work a little bit more, at the end of the day, I'm going to have more experience on my resume and more of an idea of where I'm going to go than a lot of my colleagues across the country in other higher ed programs.
Yes, totally agree. As you think about your next steps, really look at what DC, the DC area has to offer. And you might want to, if you're from somewhere else, you might want to stay here maybe an extra year to take advantage of all the professional associations that are around. Just for me as well, right before graduation, a few months before graduation, I was offered a position at the premier organization in my field, which was bilingual education. So I work for NABE, which is the National Association for Bilingual Education, headquarters right there in 15th and K. Beautiful. So then I had opportunities of the lifetime. I did some policy work for them. I did a lot of writing for them. They have a professional journal. So really take advantage of what this area has to offer, and a ton of universities if you want to do adjunct work. So we move to the next question. I'm always curious what I'm gonna get. How do you make the most of internships and apprenticeships?
I think I'll go on this. First, when I started my program here in 2004, it was a random email that came to my department chair from this organization where I'm currently working. They're looking for a doctoral students to do some international research. So, and the reason why I went to them was I was the only candidate who was called. So I didn't have any competition, and they were going to pay me $10 an hour. And as an international student, that was big money. So I said, I'm going to do it. And the job was something totally different from what I was studying, what I was trained. And I said, okay, let me do 8 weeks of things that I don't really like, or I may not enjoy, or may not add any direct value to what I'm going to be doing. And then I walk into this internship, I meet this person who studied with one of the greatest people in our field of human resource development, and he said, wow, we have so many exciting things for you to do. He started putting me up on various projects, and one of the things he told me is, like, when you graduate, you're not going anywhere, you're going to come and join this program. So for me, internship was a great segue into getting into this organization. I knew the culture, I knew the people, I knew what I was going to be doing. And again, I was very, very lucky. Many times we underestimate the role that luck plays in our life. It has one of the things that I believe is the denominator is almost fixed. You cannot change it. It's impacted by the variables around it, but we can definitely work on the numerator part of it and increase the total value. So I was very, very fortunate to have found an organization where I could literally do everything that I wanted. And I found a great mentor in this person who was there to help me through. And what I've also seen is in organizations, you'll find different people with different skill sets, and not everyone would make make a good mentor. There are people who are absolutely great in mentoring and nurturing people and helping them grow. And so I happen to find this person, and that has something which has resulted in so I would say that internships provide great opportunities. It provides you an opportunity to prove yourself. So don't take internship lightly as, okay, I'm just spending a few weeks here. It gives you an opportunity to do your best, and that could provide you a lot more opportunities that you can think through.
I want to move to the next question so we can get as many questions as possible. Thank you, Dr. Vishen. How do you make the most of professional conferences? How do you make the most of professional conferences?
Well, I think the location of where we are gave me the opportunity to go to a variety of conferences that were that come to this area. One way to get to a conference, if you don't have a lot of money to travel, is to present your research, present what you're studying in school. I know Duran and I and Sandra had the opportunity to travel to New Orleans, and we got to travel to Florida, Tampa, to present at a conference. So they said, number one, we want to hear what's in the field, what are some of the current topics that you're researching. We'll come down here, provide some travel support if you'll come and be a part of this conference and work at this conference. And it's just finding those opportunities and just joining as many, talking about technology and websites and things that weren't used, and Twitter and Facebook and all these different things now, is to try to connect to as many associations related to what you're studying or related to your program, where you can know of upcoming workshops, upcoming webinars, just different things to whether it's something that you are familiar with, or like Duran mentioned, maybe an area that you haven't studied but you want to learn more about, to go that route as well.
And just to add on to that, I think that if any of you are prospective students, a lot of first year, second year master students are intimidated by the idea of presenting at a conference. ESRI is a great place to start. I know second year students in the HEA program are actually, I believe, required to at least submit their paper for potential consideration of presenting their report here at ESRI. But once I did it the second semester of my second year in the program, I had so badly wished that I had done it my first year, or had done it at a national conference, because it's a wonderful opportunity for you to work on your public speaking skills, but also you might end up getting an award or getting some type of recognition or getting interest from somebody who didn't know you before and says, hey, I'm interested in your topic and I'd love to have further conversations with you about your research and studies. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and definitely encourage you. It never hurts to at least submit, and is a great way to meet people once you're at the conference as well.
Thank you. Networking. The word networking is used a lot in general. What does networking means to you, and how do you define it? I think a lot of the questions we answered kind of dealt with networking, so I'm going to move to the next question.
Can I just throw one quick thing in there?
Sure.
I think oftentimes when we think about networking, it's at a conference or it is at a networking event. These very I have to go to a networking event to be able to network. I play kickball here in DC, and I've gotten my last 2 jobs from a bar, actually. Including my current one. I'm sure my boss would love me to share that. But no, it's a lot of the times, too, these very informal social interactions. And again, on my kickball team, I found out that there are 5 doctors on my team, and I throw in a few lawyers, too. So these areas that you don't necessarily expect when you're just really building these natural relationships, which is what networking should be, as opposed to this very forced thing. So keep that in mind as well. And also, if you're here in town and you're going to go to Whole Foods, take the extra minute to, just make it look like you're going to go out and be a little presentable, because you never know who you're going to run into. Seriously.
Especially at Whole Foods.
Especially at Whole Foods. The president of the IMF, I ran into her one night. Yeah. I'm a nerd and I love that stuff, so there.
Thank you for sharing. balance. For the most part, we're all working, and a lot of us have families too. How did you maintain the balance?
I can't speak to this.
That's tough. I think that within 2 months of my time at GW, I'm pretty sure that I had a breakdown and called a friend and said, I've made a mistake. I can't handle working full-time and doing a full-time program. This is too much. It just takes some time to figure out what that balance is for you, to figure out what it is that you need to do to help yourself relax, whether that's exercising or going to have a drink with a friend, and forcing yourself to do that and not saying, oh no, I have 300 pages to read, by next week. You've got to just figure out. What I found very quickly is that if I, had 3 different texts to read for class for a Tuesday, then I needed to start that reading right after the class the next day and not try to do it all at once. So you very quickly start to figure out, here's how much I really need to make sure I know for this class. Maybe you don't end up reading all 100 pages, and that's okay. Maybe there's a couple of sections where you're like, I think I've got a pretty good handle on this by reading the intro paragraph and the last paragraph and taking notes. And that way, when your professor is trying to have those conversations, because I think most grad school classes are conversation-based and trying to get you engaged in the conversation, to have a couple of talking points or personal life experiences that you can infuse into that. And that's where I think you'll get a lot of the realizing that it's not necessarily important to read everything word for word.
There's also something to be said about having genuine connections with the folks that you are in your graduate programs with, and other folks that are just aligned with you, that are willing to run with you on crazy ideas. I mean, when we were in our program, we would get together for study groups, and we had a really good system. We're not gonna read 500 pages, folks. But I trust that person over there, and they trust me. And you're going to read 100, and you're going to read 100, and you're going to read yours, and we're going to write reviews. So then we get together and we study together, and we still walk away with this collective knowledge. And you can still go off and read the rest of the 400 if you wish. But what we're doing is we're thinking smart and working smart versus just working hard. But then that group becomes your peer group. So after you studied really hard, where's your balance? Well, you go off. And you have a drink, or you eat together, and then over the years, if you stay with that group, now this person has a baby, and you go to that shower, and you're happy that person has a new home. I mean, so and then dating and things of that nature. You're introducing somebody that's single to somebody else. That's how you get that balance. It's real connections with folks. It's not. Sometimes I think the internet and social media can lull us into having lots and lots of virtual connections, but they're not meaningful, deep connections, which actually probably leaves us a little more empty. So this is seeking real, genuine connections with folks. Right? And then here's the last thing. Also knowing, when we talk about balance, there's a time when there's a time for balance. There's a time when there's another time for imbalance. When you're working on a doc program and it's time for your dissertation, I'm not looking for balance. I'm looking for completion. I want to get done. So my friends would actually send me messages saying, we don't want to see you at anybody's party. We don't want to see you doing any pictures. You need to finish. So what are you doing? It's not balance that I'm seeking. I'm seeking completion. I'm going to get it done. And my crew, they're not answering my calls. They're not sending me party invites at this point in time. Right? So that you have to know when it's time for balance, when it's time for you to grind it out and get the job done.
Duran mentioned work smarter, not harder. And keep that in mind with the papers you write. If you're taking 2 or 3 classes, what topics can you be writing on for both classes that you can share that literature that you're reviewing and you're reading? What projects are you working on at your place of employment or your internship or fellowship that you can write a paper or conduct research or do assessment? That way you're doing 2 things, and then you're applying practice to your research, so you're benefiting yourself on so many levels. And also, don't be afraid to ask a professor to alter an assignment. So the worst they can do is say no, right? But sometimes I would ask a professor, like, I know I have to write a 10-page paper on this topic. Would you mind if I shift the focus a little bit from, org theory, but also throw in a little bit of this or this? And 9 times out of 10, my professors were really wonderful about that.
Totally agree. Balance is very difficult. And it's something you have to work as hard on as your academic life. So for me, in order to keep balance, it's on my calendar. Meaning that I have on my calendar time to meet with my colleagues, my friends, GW crew, as we call ourselves. We go to conferences together, we present together, we also go out and celebrate birthdays together. And that's important as you get older, because it's been found over and over that social connections is extremely important to health. So as we take care of the mind, we have to take care of the body as well. So keeping those social connections really inspire you to try different things, learn different things, move in different directions. So definitely work hard on that balance. So we're gonna try to take a couple questions from the audience as well. So anybody would like to ask any questions?
Hi, I'm Drew Atchison. I'm an education policy doctoral student here at GW. I've been in school. I actually went to William & Mary for undergrad in my grad program, my master's program. I taught for 3 years. I came back to school. And in education policy, I'm projecting that I'll probably get an office type of job, which I've never had before. So have any of you had difficulties transitioning from an academic education, teaching background to an office space, and how, I don't know, how do you make that transition successfully, I guess?
We were just talking about this before we started, how I'm personally at a crossroads of what's next, but I don't want to leave the kids. And so just how I'm going to, and looking for other opportunities and talking to my mentors and networking with colleagues, I want to make a difference in terms of policies and in terms of legislation that is unrealistic for day-to-day operations within a public school system. And I don't know any other way to do that besides going to Department of Education or going to an educational association. And I'm so torn because my joy at the end of a stressful day are the kids. No matter what's going on or, what report I have to write, what test scores I have to justify why they aren't where they need to be. And so I know in my heart, and this is all within the last week, this stepping out and sending my blast emails to folks. And I love my job. I'm at a crossroads. What can I do next to make a difference why am I continuing to see African American and Latino boys overrepresented, where I can walk down my hall and I can tell you what that class is based on the color of the kids in there. This is unacceptable, in this day and age. And where can I make that difference? And it's not sitting in a school. So I know in the end, the decisions I make are going to impact those kids. I may not be able to have that touchy-feely feeling every day, and this is what I keep telling myself. But I know things are going to change. I've got to step out, share my experiences of what's not working, and how can I make a difference, and how can I get the demands of whatever it is that's being put on teachers, educators, administrators, to, these kids, to bring them to that next level. So we'll see. And it really is a hard decision to have to go from that to into an office. The type of work I'm doing every day.
On a basic level, I would say one big difference is how to communicate with other people, because when I was working with students, I would get texts from them 11 at night, 12 o'clock at night. I don't expect that from my boss right now. She may email me very, very early in the morning, and you just have to figure out your office culture to know, what do your colleagues and your bosses expect of you in terms of your direct responses. Do they prefer you to contact them via email or text message? And sometimes that just takes asking questions, but that was a very quick, this is different from past experiences for me, and just even in terms of the language that you use and directing emails to adults versus kids, that's just very different. It just changes. So it just takes a little bit of time to readjust to a new office culture, and that probably varies from place to place.
But your internship will give you a taste of, is this for me? You may think that's what you want to do or where you're going to end up, but you may do an internship and you're like, this, I'm not happy. I can't do this in the next 10 years. Maybe I need to volunteer my time if it's not a formal internship. at another type of location or setting and get that experience, talking to people, or even observing, going into, I want to know about a new program, can we have this program at my school? Go spend a day at that school shadowing another administrator or shadowing a teacher. And there's so many different things. You may not limit yourself to just what you think. When you think of policy. And you can.
Thank you for sharing. Yes. Transition is very difficult, but in every transition, you have to always remember what is my passion. And where does, I guess, my passion meets the world's need. And I think that's the moment where you are happiest. So sometimes it's not the way that you envisioned. From the time I graduated from GW, I've done work for a nonprofit organization where I did some policy, I did organizational development, I did curriculum writing, I did professional development. I held different positions, and within all of them, I tried to find out what is my passion and where can I make a difference. And they help push you and move you in different directions and get you to the next place. So sometimes change is good. It's good to move around and see each transition as an opportunity to grow, and always remember what's my passion. And sometimes your passion is not where you are, meaning that sitting and every day doing something that may not be ideal, but you have to seek other professionals, your mentors, go to conferences and develop that, and don't let that be dormant. Always keep that alive, so no matter where you are, what position you hold, that your passion is always fueling, and you have other means to really fuel your passion. One, David?
So speaking of passion, what do you do when you hit a brick wall of bureaucracy that is standing between you and fulfillment of those passions?
Anybody wants to tackle?
Fit is such an important thing at any organization or any job you will find or go to. And I think one of the great things about being able to have different internships and fellowships while in graduate school is you get to experience those different things. So I think for you, for all of us, knowing what those non-negotiables that we have, whether it be that relationship we have with our supervisor or organizational culture, I don't think those are extremely important. I will say that I have been in a position to where I've run into that, to where, I was told that the mission of this organization is one thing and we should be doing this, but the bureaucratic wall said otherwise. And I have a feeling that many of us have run into that, and I have a feeling that we all will at some point. But I am very fortunate that where I'm at now, it's taken a couple different turns, but I have so many different opportunities where I'm at now. And so again, I think for me it was finding that fit and knowing what my non-negotiables were.
My pop used to always say, tact is telling someone to go to hell and having them be happy that they're going there. And I think sometimes with bureaucracy, you have to be very tactful. If it's like a marriage, if I genuinely care about this marriage of me in this organization, then I'm not going to leave it. I'm going to work with it. But sometimes it's not just that direct me talking to that guy. Maybe I need to get, myself and 4 people that are like-minded, and we're going to just do this work. We're going to do such a good job at it, you're going to have to notice us. You're going to come to us and you're going to ask us, what are you guys doing differently? See, now we're going to tell you, well, this is not in a gotcha fashion, not I told you so, but, well, sure, we'll tell you exactly what we're doing, and we'll tell you how to implement it for free. Great, right? So it's tactful. You are not just going straight through it. The bureaucracy does not just disappear, but you find a way to impose your will around it, and you get it done. But here's the other part. I think that there are also some deal breakers. I think that there are some things that you would just say, this is a non-negotiable, this is a deal breaker, that if this is done, if you're unfair to children, if you have practices that don't seem as if they are just the right thing. If I just can't sign up to what you guys are doing, I don't subscribe to your belief system, then you fire them. Just like they can fire you. You can fire them as well. So if you love it and you want to stay with it, you work around it, and you be tactful. But if they really have hit that deal breaker, then you fire them, and you move on.
question here? Oh, that's you.
Any more questions? So we'll choose some questions from here, and maybe that will help you come up with some other questions. Did you start your GSEHD grad program already knowing your career path?
Not even close.
I knew my career path, but that was not what I'm doing right now. So
Great answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for all of us, even though we knew the directions that we're going, I think life and the amazing place that DC metropolitan area is has offered us numerous opportunities to do different things. And that's why at the beginning I said one of the biggest advice is to really be open to do things that are totally different from what you envisioned. And in doing so, I think you'll be able to merge what you've learned, the book knowledge, your passion, and something new. And I think every time I get to a new position, I'm always grateful for the last one. Because it seems like it's like the perfect storm. Everything kind of led me to that new position was perfect and making me really a good fit for that new position. So welcome.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from my internship coordinator here was that she said, Jacob, the job that you and I are going to have in 15 years doesn't exist yet. And I think that we have to really keep that in mind, that so much it's not about having certain lines or certain job titles. It's really about those skills that we're going to be able to transfer. We know that education at any level is not really working the way it should right now. And so I hope, and with going back to what you said, blending this actual practice but looking at the policy, hopefully there are ways that in jobs of the future are going to be able to incorporate those more. It's going to require innovations, plug in ESRI, the I part. But yes, I think we should keep that in mind as well.
Thank you. How did you remain motivated to finish? Get it done, get it done. How did you remain motivated to finish?
I can start with that one. I think that with this is just claiming something. Like in the skin that I'm in, being a black man in education, being the first person from my family to get a doctorate, that's a big thing. That was a big thing for my family, for my neighborhood. Like folks knew about it that I didn't tell that I was into this program. And they didn't exactly know what you were doing, but they knew you were in DC and you were working in that program and you were going to be a doctor. So I remember having a conversation with one of my buddies. I had helped her to get the job at GW because she's fantastic, and she was at William & Mary with me. And she was at a crossroads where she wanted to quit. She wanted to stop her program. And I remember having a conversation with her and just saying, what a luxury. What a luxury that you have, that you can just feel as if you want to quit today. You're so tired with your job that you just want to quit. I do not have that luxury. We are going to finish this thing. We're going to get this thing done because I made that promise to that old guy back in Richmond, Virginia, that I would finish. So for some of us just have different motivators. Some of us, it's, if getting that degree and 5 other people in your family already kind of have it and it was just kind of predetermined that Joey's going to get it, then maybe you don't have that same passion. But for me, there was no way that you were going to rip this opportunity from me. And not only that, but the other part is, after I get in, you really better watch out, because here come my people. I'm bringing them in as well.
Nice.
Right? And that has been something that I think I've just tried to maintain throughout my career, is recognizing that, again, like Patton said, you ain't done. You know you're not done, right? Well, it's cool for you to get through the door, but how about you hold that door open for somebody else that's going to, that's going to really light the world up, So.
Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Nana, and I'm an undergraduate at the School of Media and Public Affairs. I was wondering, my brother's actually in the process right now of graduate school, and he graduated from GW in 2012. So he wants to go into some programs at GW, and he's looking at other schools as well. He really wants to focus on history and slavery and African American studies, but he also wants to do museum studies. So right now, what he's dealing with is funds. Like, graduate school is very expensive, and he's trying to figure out, should he choose a graduate school because they're giving him a lot of money, or should he choose one that he's gonna have to take a lot of loans out with, but he's in love with, like he really feels like if he goes to this school or he's in this area or city, then he will prosper and do very well? Or should he choose one where, hey, we're gonna give you the money, but it might not be the exact program that you're interested in? What advice would you give to him?
It's so hard to say what you should when it comes to money. Personally, I would go with the money. This is just my 2 cents. But look for a school where the opportunities are there for you to, okay, you have this degree, then what are you going to do with this degree? So it's not just, it's money and the program. When I was looking at programs, and I'm from here, I was working here, living here, I looked at, do I go to UDC for in-state rate, or do I scrape penny? Because I didn't get money at first to come to GW. Here's a little bit of money, here's this carrot dangling. But I knew once I got in, and if I was passionate, I would find the money. I got in, there was no more money. A student, because of whatever medical personal reason, had to leave the program. My second year, I got her grant. So I had to weigh my options. I don't mind going in debt a little bit, but I don't want it to be all this money where I'm not going to be able to do the work I want to do because I'm so worried about paying for this loan. So it really is your own situation. I also was living at home. So that's just kind of what I went after, what I was looking for within this area, because I knew this is where I was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Financial counseling is really, really difficult when it comes to grad school, and I work with employers and businesses all the time, and this is a very common conversation that we have about people who are spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to get degrees that aren't resulting in jobs that they think will allow them to pay off their loans. So now we have more than $1 trillion in student loans, and it's a very overwhelming process. So I think that the best thing to do is find out as much information as possible about the field that he's going into. Is that going to be a realistic life for him when he might have to pay, $1,000 each month off of his loans? Is that something that is even doable? Because sometimes the answer is no, and you don't realize that until you're in the situation. So there are a lot of great apprenticeship programs that will pay for stipends and whatnot, but if you're already working full-time, it's harder to do that. So you need to think about your individual situation and what is realistic for you.
A few things to point out too. You really have to look at side by side and identify the gap. As we know, higher ed cost has a sticker shock, and you really have to look at what that is after you get your grants or your whatever it may be, and really look at those side by side. And then you have to ask yourself, is this a $5,000 difference? That might not be as big as a $40,000 difference, right? And then it sounds like the field that he's interested in going, for most of us going into education, knowing some of the federal policies that exist is so important. Granted, they change, it seems, every year with the Department of Education. But the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, if you work for a 501c3 organization, a nonprofit organization, and you do 10 years of service and you pay 120 consecutive months of your payments, those leftover loans get forgiven. Whatever that balance is, get forgiven. With that said, in the president's budget this year, he's proposing to cap that at $57,000. So write a letter, dear Barack, don't do that, please. Please write that letter. And also, there's pay-as-you-earn options. If you have to take out federal loans versus private, that's a completely different game too. If you have to take out private loans, your payments, you might have to be paying on multiple loans. But if you're able to do it all on federal loans, then you can do the pay-as-you-earn program. And that's going to let you, again, I think it limits at about 10% of your net or income or something like that. Again, don't quote me on these stats, but look it up, because these are things that are really going to make a big difference. And my final thing, ask for more money. It sounds like your brother is I would guess, probably pretty unique in the type of work he wants to do and so if he's coming to GW or other schools and they say, hey, we'll pay X amount of money, have him go up and say, hey, I want to go here, but this place is offering me more. And I did that, and and GW gave me just a little bit more money that made it possible for me to come here. So again, the worst answer they can give you is no.
Okay, we'll try another question from this. I think we covered this best advice for current graduate students. Let's try another one. Writing is such a critical part of grad school. Please share any advice you may have on writing a thesis or dissertation. Anybody working on their dissertation currently?
What are you writing about?
Alternative education.
Yeah?
The voices of those who've actually graduated from an alt-ed program.
So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the literature that exists in the field should inform your decision making. You want to know the literature. You know, I would encourage. I mentor a good amount of doc students that are just trying to finish. You know, we want to finish. We want to complete. Yeah, trying to finish, right? So what I always ask them to do is this. I say, send me the 5 to 10 absolute best articles in your field right now. Then let's create a graphic that connects those things together, right? What it's going to do is it's going to inform what you're doing. You don't want to create something without thinking about the literature. So the literature is going to tell you this is a hole in the field. This is where you should dig. This is where you should pour your soul into to help to fix this problem. What you also find is by getting those 5 to 10 major articles, you're going to work backwards. I want to see what informed article number 1. So I go to their references section and I read every single thing that you read. I guarantee you're going to be an authority on it after you read 20 articles, 30 articles on it. You will be. You just will be. Right? And you want to find primary sources versus secondary sources. That way when you get into that dissertation defense and someone asks you about a quotation that you used, well, you'll remember it. You will remember it. On that day, in front of everyone, you will remember it because you read the primary source versus just seeing the quote, thinking that it was adorable language and inserting it into your paper. Right? Which is what we might do for some other graduate programs. It is a different level of writing. Your chapter 2, your literature should inform everything. So after you've read those 5 to 10 major articles, you're going to see some trends. You're going to see, well, this guy and that guy said that we need this. And in fact, 4 other people said that we need this. Well, what is it that I'm going to do? I'm going to do what the academy is asking me to do, what they're begging me to do. And it's all in the literature. It's right there in front of your face. You just have to pull through it, and you have to pour through it, but start with the literature first.
The gap will appear.
And the gap is going to appear. You will see trends. I guarantee you, you will see trends. All right, and then you follow those trends. That's what should inform your data. That's how you design your study. You don't do it the opposite way. You don't design the study and then try to find the data that matches the way in which I did it. No, they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to say, go to a middle school. And what you really should do is survey the general ed teachers and such and such and such. And here's an instrument. Find the 4 people that agree with it, right? So that the data drive your decision making.
And
I just saved you a year. Hey. That's cool.
Anyone else working on thesis, dissertation?
And one more thing to add to that, when I was going through my doctoral program, just the amount of assignments and writing that I had to do forced me to improve my writing skills. Initially, when I used to write, I used to send all my assignments in blue, and it would come back in red with all the track changes. And I would wonder, what did I write, you know? My writing was totally lost because my professors would, correct everything that I had written. So one of the things that I learned is throughout the process is how can I write succinctly, how can I write in a manner that focuses in terms of trying to capture my language versus what I think will sound scholarly or what will sound profound. So I think the coursework to me was designed in a manner that really helped me to improve my writing skills because that's one of the things that I need to do constantly in my work, like to be able to write quickly, to be able to write without the time that I had to do it. So I think if you take some of those assignments seriously, it should really help you to prepare.
And writing every day, I used to make sure that I wrote every day, so that there's no big lag between the time that I wrote my last, page to the next one. At the beginning, I was going to school full time and I was teaching full time, so it was definitely trying to balance it all. But I made a promise to myself to never disconnect myself from the writing for too long, because as we know, life happens and life will happen, and the tendency is to put that one aside and deal with life. So to keep that going, the other advice is maybe going to the Library of Congress. I don't know if you've done that before, but the Library of Congress, you could download dissertations for free, as opposed to if you go to university, you have to pay for many of them. And you can look for the one that's closest to the one that you're doing to see you're looking for the gap in the trends, and you're looking for where can you make a difference. And it took me a little longer to complete my dissertation, but I created my own instrument because it didn't exist. But I'm so grateful that I did that for the time, because it's 10 years later. My dissertation is still very timely. I did a lot of work on language planning, and it's something that I do internationally, and it was well worth the effort. So when you see the gap and you can really see where there's a need and you work towards that, that's really helpful, because it has a life way after your dissertation. Yes, David?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, besides coming back and giving us your time on this panel, how do you give back to your university as an alum? I just set that one up for you.
I am very specific in my giving, and a lot of my, Jacinta, don't listen, a lot of my giving goes back to my undergraduate institution. And me personally, I never give to a general fund, just because coming from an underrepresented population on my undergraduate campus, I want to make sure that, because from my experience, those offices did not have the funding they needed. Those offices were overlooked beyond belief. And so I make sure when I write my check, as small as they are, they go directly to either the Women's Center on campus or the LGBT Resource Center on campus, because they do such great work that often gets overlooked. And that's, again, that goes with my kind of personal mission. And so, yeah, that's how I make my decision.
When I was talking to Duran about this a few minutes ago. When I was here at GW as a graduate student, I helped to restart or bring back the student chapter of the Council for Exceptional Children, which is the largest special ed organization. And even though I've graduated over 10 years ago, I swear I'm still a member of that undergrad chapter. But currently in the professional chapter, what we've done, I've actually been on campus twice this semester, helping the current chapter get active again. Sharing my experiences, how to get members, the benefits of being involved in this organization professionally. It's right in Crystal City, and also trying to just give students the opportunity to understand the leadership opportunities within this organization, who's also often looking for graduate students to come sit on a panel, to do internships. And so the way I give back is to try to support that, support special ed students and connect them with professionals in the field.
And I think that that's really the best way. I think of it larger than GW, but really, as I said before, I think anyone in these various fields are just so interested in connecting with people and talking to them about their passions and finding similarities. So just like I tell students never to turn down taking on an informational interview, I never turn down giving one, because I think that it's such a great opportunity to get to know about a person, to really get to their inner core of what it is that they want to do with their lives. And that's a really neat connection to take on forever.
Okay, we'll take another question. What is something you wish you knew while you were in grad school?
I think the advancements in technology, thinking about how important it is to have mobile devices now, how critical these things are. So if there was a way to marry what we were learning about in graduate school with app development, I think we'd all be sitting on a beach somewhere, just sipping Mai Tais. I mean, so yeah, just thinking about commerce and how it has changed. Internationally, that's huge. So to marry those two things, would love to go back in time and take the classes that I took with business classes and some deep classes in like app development, easily.
I wish I had known more about the other graduate programs in GSEHD. How something like this would have been great to talk to, back to my HR, or international education, or policy. We're in our own worlds, we're rushing to class, we're about our papers, to have the networking right here on our own campus. Forget going to a conference and spending money to travel somewhere. Those worlds aren't brought together. And just think about the opportunities to just talk to another grad student who's talking about their internship and things like that. So any way you can to connect with the people right down the hall. And I don't know if something through the Alumni Association or what we can do, but I just wish I had known who to even pick up the phone and talk to about internships, policy.
And taking those classes. I didn't realize until my second year that I could take classes outside of higher education administration. I ended up taking a counseling class. I took one in nonprofit management. That's an amazing thing that you're able to do that. Not all graduate programs will allow you to take it outside of your school, and I feel like that made a big difference in terms of my overall experience at GW.
Yeah, and I think I would echo that too. Like, there is a lot of flexibility in terms of the courses that you can take and how you can customize some of the things based on what you really want. But sometimes we think that, like you cannot take a course outside. And when you look back, some of the fringe courses, the courses that you thought were not really that critical, have played such an important factor. Like, I remember I took an extra course in educational measurement. The reason was I had a tuition assistance and I could take an extra class. I said, okay, let me take that class. And in my workplace, I have about 30 PhD psychometricians who work for my program. And all that learning, that extra class today is really helping me, because when they talk about KR20, I can talk about KR21 in their own language. So sometimes some of the things that you do outside, like, Jacob was talking about a sociology course, something outside. So I think if you sit and explore the possibilities of maybe taking a course outside or connecting with people who are outside of your program, sometimes you only talk to your own classmates and don't have time to connect with that. So that would be something great. And it's interesting, you sometimes go outside and to a conference and you talk to someone, and then you realize both of you were from the same program, or in GSEHD a couple of years apart, and then you think maybe we should have connected 6 years back. So that could be something.
Oh, let's take a question from the audience.
She hasn't asked a question. She can ask first.
Hi, my name is Lee, and I am a recent alumna. I defended my dissertation in December. I find myself underemployed right now, and so I wanted to bring us back to the topic of transitioning from grad school into your work life. And I was wondering if you all had some advice on whether to continue to work towards your passion if you're finding that a pretty hard nut to crack, or whether you should cast your net a little bit wider and redefine yourself and be willing to do that a little bit, and how you strike the balance between those two things and kind of know where you should best land for your first job.
What's your program, and what was your goal?
I am in education policy, and I have a background in teaching. My passion is working with teacher improvement and school improvement efforts. I would love to be school district based, but my teaching experience is in Chicago, and I don't have very many connections here, and I'm finding the central office and school districts here to be kind of a tough nut to crack, and I know that I could do think tank and Department of Ed and things like that, but I don't know whether it's wise to continue trying to get in where I know I really want to be or not.
I would say that the 21st century asks us to redefine ourselves. I don't think we have a choice in the matter, but it's a great thing. Again, I found myself in different positions that I had no idea that I would go into, but they allowed me a chance to grow. All that being said, cast much wider than your immediate, passion or what you think you might want to do, and never see something as definitive. This is what I'm going to do for a couple years. You might love it. This is what I'm going to do for 2 years. You didn't really like it, but it opened the door to other things and other contacts and other network. So especially in this economic time, just cast as wide as you can and grow from there. Yeah.
I had initially planned on working on a campus, and even though we have a decent amount of campuses in DC, I found that incredibly hard to even get a call back once I put a resume. I'm like, oh, I thought I did a good job, and so I was not planning on going where I ended up, but I've really been enjoying it, and it's also allowed me to. And I think this is the key too. Even if you're not doing something that you're 100% want to do, keeping yourself involved in those other areas, whether that's being active in a professional organization and going to a conference, or maybe serving on a committee at your organization that allows you to keep your hand in something, if it's the policy piece you're interested in. And the hard truth is, at the end of the day, we have to pay our rent, and we know the rent's pretty high in DC, and so you have to do what you have to do. And but from there, you just have to keep on working and keep on building those networks, and just know that you're continuing to get amazing experience and finding ways to hone those skills that you know that you're going to continue to need at the job of your dreams. And then that way, when you're doing those interviews, you can be like, yeah, I have all this experience in addition. This allowed me to hone this. So I am the ideal candidate plus.
I would also say don't underestimate the importance of people power, being able to have genuine connections with folks. And also, when it's time, when a system really hasn't worked for you, my network has not worked for me. It hasn't yielded the results that I want. My friends, the way in which I've searched for this job has not yielded the results that I want. I'm not going to do the same thing. I need a new network. I need a different way that I'm going to look for jobs. I need to be around some folks that, if you saw us together, you probably would think that we were just strangers. But maybe that stranger is aligned with your passion. So don't be afraid to find some brand new friends. I personally don't cold call folks anymore, but I have in the past when cold calling was necessary. Use a technique that's necessary. I'm not going to say that you won't find a job in the post, because you will. It's certainly possible. But I think it's more probable that you're going to find a job by saying, the conversation I had with somebody last week, somebody calls me up and they says, well, I want to connect you with this person. This person's a GW grad. I think you need to meet Dr. Gresham. Okay, well, so we meet virtually, then we hop on the phone and we talk a little bit. I find out what the person's passion is. I said, well, it sounds like you need to go to the charter school. Well, I'm on the board of a charter school. Why don't you talk to this person over here? Now, I'm not going to get you the job. You got to do your own sweat equity, but I'll get you an interview. I'll give you the email of the person. Tell them that you talked to me, right? These are two people that were not connected at all. Maybe it did start with a cold call of that person calling the person that they were connected to have a conversation with it. Because I've expanded. I don't have any more ideas. I don't know who I should talk to, right? But again, it still comes back to me, to people power. And being able to genuinely connect with folks. I got to get outside of my house. I got to get outside of the normal network that I have and trust some folks that I have never seen before.
And we had a question, yes.
Yeah, Drew Atchison again. Now that you've all graduated and you're all doing something else and you're all involved in your work, how do you continue to grow, continue to learn without the university as your framework for doing that?
Personally, when I'm giving suggestions to teachers about workshops or conferences, I go to them myself. I'm not embarrassed to be sitting in a teacher ed workshop on how to teach reading, or differentiation. how am I going to supervise and provide support to my staff if I don't understand what that means and how that looks and how to incorporate technology? I know I'm weak in technology. So I reach out to people in my county. Can you just come over and show me how to work this app? What does this mean? How is this going to benefit my special ed student? And so I'm always taking coursework. I'm always talking to my teachers who are in grad school. Who is the big name right now? You know, what's the big trend that I need to read up about and learn more about? What's in the field and what are they teaching? What is your teacher preparation programs telling you? Are they preparing you? What do I need to go back and study? And so I just try to keep my finger on the pulse of what is impacting day-to-day operations and instruction.
Yeah. Never stop learning. I think for me, every year in my mind, I make a list of what do I need to grow as a professional. So, for example, I've done a lot of adjunct work, but I didn't go into academia. When I graduated from GW, I was offered a tenure track position with one of the city colleges of New York. And when I looked at the salary, and I looked at, I grew up in New York. I'm originally moved here from New York. I say, oh my God, I'll have to move back with my parents in order to live on this salary. So I decided not to take that route, academia, which I really wanted. I decided to do what I'm doing now, which I absolutely love, and I never regretted it for a day. Because it helped me venture into new things. But what I think what it did most for me is really push me to look at what are the resources that I need and how do I get there? What are the skill sets that I need and how do I get there? So every year, like I said, I would think about the different books that I want to read. I'll order them on Amazon, and on my bedside table, I have like a ton. I constantly read them. Technology, I look for somebody in my office because that's ever changing and evolving. Right now, and every year I identify one person. I say, you are my mentor. So right now it's the media specialist, instructional specialist, and I said, you are my mentor this year. So as I try new technology, it could be as simple as Twitter. I said, how do I do this? How do I use it in order to, share anything that I'm doing educationally, and so forth. You cannot stop. I also make sure that I present at conferences every year, and what I choose is really something, my passion, that I'm not doing in my 9 to 5. Remember I said I love language planning, international education. I don't do that in my 9 to 5. So how do I get to feel that passion? I present at conferences, and I stay with kindred spirit. So every year I go to the ESRI conference, and I present. This year I'm going to Japan and be presenting in that conference, and I get to really grow, because if you have to present, you have to keep up with the new research and so forth. So it never stops, but you have to make a plan. So reading, participating in conference, staying in contact with people in that field. And that means it could be just dinner. It doesn't have to be anything formal. And always doing it. And somebody at work, somebody you see every day. Yes. I had a question over here. Yes.
I just wanted to speak to you a little bit. I had a suggestion to maybe volunteer some of your knowledge to some organization, and then also not to be discouraged by your Chicago. I feel like being a Chicago person in DC right now is a pretty huge asset. There's a lot of Chicago people around, and you'd just be surprised who they know. And talk to me afterwards. I know a few.
You see? That's how you do it. See? People power. See?
So are we coming to a close? So this is the last question, but feel free to talk to us after. I signed up for the GSEHD Alumni Student Network reception that immediately follows this panel discussion. What's the best way to capitalize on it?
Quality, not quantity. I tell this to my students all the time. Just because you leave some event with 100 cards does not mean you've actually networked well. Find those 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 people that you think you're going to learn from. If you're looking for someone that can be a great resource or a mentor, make sure you focus on them and really be genuine and be honest about yourself and build that relationship and don't just go around grabbing cards. That's, I think, my best advice.
I think follow-up is important. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to email somebody, or if you're going to connect with someone, genuinely make an effort to do that. But I agree with you as well.
And I think those go hand in
Yeah,
hand,
it does. It does.
And don't be afraid to walk away. I think sometimes people try to stay too long in a conversation, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not interesting or they're not interesting. You've just reached the conclusion of your conversation. That's okay.
And also, if you're an introvert, networking events can be awful. And so just know that a quick exchange, but also an email that is more thoughtful and has more time, that might be the best way for you as an introvert to reach out and still have that same quality. It's very important for us to know our personality types and how we thrive there.
For sure. Okay, so time is up. It went by really quickly. Time flies when you're having fun. Again, it was such a delightful experience to be here. I think I can speak on behalf of the panelists that we enjoy. That's our way of giving back to the university. We stay connected whenever we could. Many of us have been adjunct professors here, myself included. I was also past president of Phi Delta Kappa after I graduated. So staying connected to the university definitely helps you fuel your passion from your daily activities. Yes.
Well, let's give a round of applause to our panel. Did you all find it informative and helpful? Did you? I saw some of you taking notes. Some of you that didn't. I saw one person that had 2 pages of notes. So that's great. That's great. That's what this is all about. So thank you again, panelists, for being available, making yourself available, moderator, for making yourself available. Another big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you to you.
All right, I would be remiss in not doing my job if I didn't ask for your feedback. I need your feedback. So if you have not received a feedback survey, I can definitely make sure you get one, but they are on some of the seats situated throughout this room. We want to make sure we capture what your experience was. It's only 3 or 4 questions. It's actually 3 questions in 1 comment box to ask you. The 4th question is asking you what comments or what topics would you like to talk about next year? What kind of things would be helpful for you as we go along and try to make good, genuine connections with our alumni and current students that are in the program. So please make sure you fill out the survey. And then panelists, I want you to give a big round of applause to the audience.
Yes.
Yes.